Exercise 3, we're going to continue by calculating the number of arrivals by day of week and by room type. So I think in your worksheet, you're probably going to see the day of week appearing as numbers. So again, to convert it to the English name of the day of the week, we're going to change the format to DDD. If you don't have this format, you can add it in this custom format, and now we can see more clearly according to the day of week. Now, we have two criteria that we need to consider before we count a booking. The first criteria is the room type, and the second criteria is the day of arrival. So earlier we used this function called COUNTIF. However, COUNTIF is limited to only one criteria. Now we have two criteria, so we need to use a slightly different function because we can't use COUNTIF. It only takes one criteria, but there's a variation of COUNTIF. It's called COUNTIFS. You just need to add an S. And COUNTIFs can take multiple criteria. So as you can see here from the template, after you put in the first criteria, the first pair, the first range and the criteria you want to apply to the range, you can type a comma and then ... So you can keep adding more and more criteria range and criteria pairs. So that's what we're going to use for this part of the exercise. We're going to use COUNTIFs. So the first argument is the first criteria range. And by the way, you can either go with the room type first or the day of arrival. It doesn't matter. They're interchangeable. The order is interchangeable, but you just have to remember to put the proper criteria for that range after it. So let's say we want to apply the room type criteria first. So we go, again, you can type this manually or you can just use the mouse. As you click over, it will fill in the sheet reference for you. So it saves you a lot of typing. Okay, so the first criteria is the room type. Okay, so I go ahead and select that and then I type copy. I go back to my original worksheet so I can put in the criteria, which is A15. So it must be equal to whatever is the value in that cell. And while I'm here, I'm just going to put in the dollar signs to make that absolute. Okay, so that's my first criteria range. So now I want to enter my second criteria range. So I type comma, and now it's waiting for the second criteria range. So the second one would be the day of the week, the arrival day of the week. So I go back to my other worksheet, exercise 2, and the arrival days are in K5 to K95. So I select that with the mouse and it fills it in for me. I make this absolute to make sure that later on when I copy, this reference does not adjust comma. And my criteria is going to be that it should be equal to my arrival day, which is in B14, which is the value is 1, which corresponds to Sunday. So I'm going to put the closing parenthesis there now. Okay, I just checked that my references are correct, and then I press enter. Okay, and you can see that no one arrived on a Sunday who booked standard twin room for this period for which I'm collecting data for this this commodities fair. Now I can copy this downwards and I can copy this sideways so I can fill this in quickly, but let me just do a quick review of all my references. So this reference A15, I do want the row number to adjust because when I copy this later on to row 16, 17, 18, 19, and so on, I want 15 to adjust. But I do want the column to remain column A because later on I may copy this to other columns. So when I copy this later on to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the column reference may adjust unless I put a dollar sign there. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, so I'm always going to refer to column A for the room type. Same applies to B14. So B14 references the criteria value for the day of arrival. So when I copy this later on to other rows or to other columns, I want to make sure that the row number remains row 14, right? Because all of my criteria for the day of arrival is here on row 14. But my column can adjust because later on I may copy it. So it corresponds to C14, D14, E14, F14. So after reviewing that all my references are correct, suitable for copying, now I can drag this downwards and I can drag it sideways. Okay. There. Okay, and you can see here that no one arrived on a Friday or on a Saturday for all room types. Okay, and the highest arrivals were actually on Tuesday for standard twin room and Tuesday for deluxe twin room. Okay, and you can also see that our references adjusted properly according to the location where we copied it to. And now we're going to quickly add a sum here. Now, you do have to check that your sum function filled in the correct references and it looks fine. So we have completed this portion of the exercise using COUNTIFS, and you can also use the same function, COUNTIFS, to complete this second part, which is just simply counting departures.